The History of India, A Journey Through Millennia.
India is a land of unparalleled diversity and rich historical legacy. From its earliest civilizations along the Indus River to becoming a modern democracy, India's history spans thousands of years, shaped by a vast array of cultures, religions, empires, and political movements. With a complex past that includes the development of major world religions, powerful empires, colonial rule, and a successful independence movement, India's historical narrative is deeply intertwined with global history. This article traces India's long and varied history, exploring the ancient civilizations, dynastic empires, colonial encounters, and its path to independence and modernity. Ancient India, Indus Valley Civilization, circa 2500–1500 BCE. India's history begins with the rise of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's earliest urban societies. Flourishing around 2500 BCE in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, this civilization had highly advanced cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, known for their well-planned streets, drainage systems, and impressive architecture. The people of the Indus Valley were skilled in agriculture, metallurgy, and trade. They established extensive trade links with Mesopotamia and other ancient civilizations, exchanging goods like cotton, spices, and precious stones. While the Indus Valley script remains undeciphered, archaeological evidence shows a complex social structure and religious practices that likely included worship of fertility deities. By 1500 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization had declined due to unclear reasons, possibly climate change or invasions, paving the way for new cultures to emerge in the region. The Vedic period and the rise of Hinduism, circa 1500 to 500 BCE, following the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization, the Vedic period, 1500 to 500 BCE, marked the arrival of the Indo-Aryans in northern India. The Vedic people were primarily pastoralists and warriors, and their religious texts, known as the Vedas, form the foundation of Hinduism. These ancient Sanskrit texts laid the basis for the caste system, which organized society into four main groups: Brahmins, priests; Kshatriyas, warriors; Vaishyas, merchants; and Shudras, laborers. During this period, the early forms of Hinduism began to develop, with rituals centered on fire sacrifices and hymns to deities like Indra, Agni, and Soma. Social organization was largely patriarchal, and the Vedic texts gave rise to India's earliest forms of philosophy, law, and social customs. By the end of the Vedic period, important philosophical texts called the Upanishads began to emerge, exploring deeper metaphysical questions about the nature of reality, karma, and reincarnation, ideas that would profoundly influence Indian religion and philosophy for millennia. The Mahajanapadas and the Rise of Kingdoms, circa 600 to 300 BCE. Around 600 BCE, India saw the emergence of powerful Mahajanapadas, or great kingdoms, across the northern plains. 16 Mahajanapadas were established, with Magadha, Kosala, Kuru, and Vatsa being among the most prominent. These kingdoms were ruled by monarchs or oligarchies, and they engaged in frequent warfare and alliances to expand their territories. It was during this period that two major religious movements, Jainism and Buddhism, were born in the region. Mahavira, 599–527 BCE, the 24th Tirthankara of Jainism, advocated for a path of non-violence, truth, and asceticism. At the same time, Siddhartha Gautama, circa 563 to 483 BCE, later known as the Buddha, founded Buddhism, emphasizing the middle path, the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path to achieve enlightenment and liberation from suffering. Both Jainism and Buddhism rejected the rigid caste system and the authority of the Vedic Brahmins, making them appealing to large segments of the population, particularly merchants and those in lower castes. The Maurya Empire, unification of India, 321–185 BCE. The Maurya Empire marked the first time most of the Indian subcontinent was unified under a single political entity. Founded by Chandragupta Maurya in 321 BCE, the empire stretched from present-day Afghanistan to the Deccan Plateau in southern India. Chandragupta's rise to power followed the invasion of northwestern India by Alexander the Great, whose campaign left a power vacuum in the region. Chandragupta's advisor, Chanakya, wrote the Arthashastra, a treatise on statecraft, military strategy, and economics, which remains an important source of knowledge about ancient Indian governance. The Maurya Empire reached its zenith under Ashoka the Great, r. 268–232 BCE, who initially expanded the empire through military conquests but later embraced Buddhism after witnessing the devastating effects of war. Ashoka promoted Buddhist teachings across Asia, sending missionaries as far as Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia. His edicts, inscribed on pillars and rocks across the empire, proclaimed his commitment to non-violence, religious tolerance, and social welfare. Ashoka's reign left a lasting impact on Indian culture and the spread of Buddhism, but after his death, the Maurya Empire began to decline and eventually collapsed in 185 BCE. The Gupta Empire, the Golden Age of India, circa 320 to 550 CE, after several centuries of political fragmentation, the Gupta Empire, circa 320 to 550 CE, rose to prominence, heralding what is often referred to as the Golden Age of India. Under rulers like Chandragupta I, Samudragupta, and Chandragupta II, the empire became a center of learning, culture, and scientific achievement. During the Gupta period, classical Indian literature, art, and architecture flourished. Scholars like Kalidasa, known for his poetry and dramas, and Aryabhata, a mathematician and astronomer who calculated the value of pi and theorized about the Earth's rotation, were active during this time. The concept of zero was also formalized during this period, revolutionizing mathematics. Hinduism became the dominant religion, with magnificent temples dedicated to deities like Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi being constructed across the empire. The Gupta rulers were also tolerant of other faiths, allowing Buddhism and Jainism to coexist alongside Hinduism. However, by the 6th century, the empire weakened due to invasions by the Hunas, Huns, and internal strife, leading to its eventual disintegration. Islamic invasions and the Delhi Sultanate, circa 1206 to 1526, from the 8th century onward, Arab traders and invaders began establishing a foothold in the western regions of India, particularly in Sindh. However, the more significant Islamic influence came with the Turkic and Afghan invasions of northern India, beginning in the 11th century. In 1206, Qutb-ud-Din Aibak founded the Delhi Sultanate, which marked the beginning of Islamic rule in northern India. The Delhi Sultanate went through several dynasties, including the Khilji, Tughlaq, and Lodi dynasties, and it expanded its rule over much of the subcontinent. The Sultans of Delhi were patrons of Islamic culture and architecture, building iconic structures such as the Qutb Minar and Alai Darwaza in Delhi. They also introduced Islamic law, Persian art and literature, and new administrative systems, which blended with the existing Hindu traditions. The Delhi Sultanate faced frequent challenges from both internal revolts and external invasions, particularly from the Mongols. In 1398, Timur, Tamerlane, sacked Delhi, weakening the Sultanate and setting the stage for the rise of the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire, a synthesis of cultures, 1526 to 1857, the Mughal Empire was one of the greatest empires in Indian history, founded by Babur, a descendant of Timur and Genghis Khan, after his victory at the Battle of Panipat in 1526. The Mughal rulers were Muslims, but they adopted a policy of tolerance toward their largely Hindu subjects, leading to a cultural synthesis that defined Mughal India. The Mughal Empire reached its height under Akbar the Great, r. 1556 to 1605, who expanded the empire through military conquests and diplomacy. Akbar is remembered for his efforts to foster religious harmony, abolishing the jizya, a tax on non-Muslims, and engaging in discussions with leaders of different faiths. His court became a center of art, literature, and science, with Persian becoming the language of administration. Akbar's successors, including Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb, continued to expand the empire, although with varying degrees of success. Shah Jahan, r. 1628 to 1658, is best known for commissioning the Taj Mahal, one of the most famous architectural achievements in the world, as a mausoleum for his wife Mumtaz Mahal. The Mughal Empire began to decline in the late 17th century under the reign of Aurangzeb, r. 1658 to 1707, whose religious intolerance and constant warfare drained the empire's resources. By the early 18th century, the empire had weakened significantly, paving the way for the rise of regional powers like the Marathas, Sikhs, and eventually the British. British colonization, the Raj, 1757 to 1947, the British East India Company first established trading posts in India in the early 17th century, but by the mid-18th century, it had become a major political and military force. After the decisive Battle of Plassey in 1757, the company gained control over Bengal, marking the beginning of British dominance in India. Over the next century, the British expanded their control across the subcontinent through a combination of military conquests, alliances, and diplomacy. The Sepoy Mutiny, also known as the Indian Rebellion of 1857, a major uprising against British rule, was crushed, and in 1858, the British Crown formally took control of India, marking the beginning of the British Raj. Under British rule, India became the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, supplying raw materials such as cotton, tea, and spices, while also serving as a market for British goods. The British built extensive infrastructure, including railways, roads, and telegraph systems, but their rule also led to economic exploitation, famines, and widespread poverty. Indian nationalism began to rise in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with figures like Dadabhai Nauroji, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Gopal Krishna Gokhale advocating for greater rights and self-governance. The formation of the Indian National Congress in 1885 marked a turning point in the struggle for independence. The fight for independence, 1919 to 1947, the early 20th century saw the rise of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who would become the most iconic leader of the Indian independence movement. Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence, ahimsa, and civil disobedience, satyagraha, inspired millions of Indians to resist British rule through peaceful means. His campaigns against the Rowlatt Act, the Salt Tax, culminating in the Salt March of 1930, and British economic policies garnered widespread support. At the same time, other leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhas Chandra Bose emerged as key figures in the independence movement. Nehru, a close ally of Gandhi, advocated for socialism and modernity, while Bose favored more radical, militant methods of resistance, eventually aligning with Axis powers during World War II. The demands for independence grew stronger after the war, and in 1947, Britain finally agreed to grant India its independence. However, this came at the cost of partitioning the country into two separate states, India and Pakistan. The partition led to massive population exchanges and violent communal riots, with millions of Hindus and Muslims displaced from their homes. On August 15, 1947, India became an independent nation, with Jawaharlal Nehru serving as its first Prime Minister. Post-independence India, Challenges and Achievements, 1947-present, India's post-independence years were marked by significant challenges. The partition had left deep scars, with communal tensions between Hindus and Muslims flaring up in several parts of the country. Additionally, India faced the monumental task of integrating over 500 princely states into a single, unified republic. Under Nehru's leadership, India adopted a democratic constitution in 1950, declaring itself a sovereign, socialist, secular, and democratic republic. The Indian constitution, which is one of the longest in the world, guaranteed fundamental rights to all citizens, regardless of caste, creed, or religion. India also adopted a policy of non-alignment during the Cold War, refusing to align itself with either the United States or the Soviet Union. Instead, it focused on self-reliance, industrialization, and agricultural reforms, although economic growth remained modest during the first few decades. Subsequent leaders like Indira Gandhi, who became India's first female Prime Minister in 1966, and her son Rajiv Gandhi played significant roles in shaping India's political landscape. Indira Gandhi's tenure was marked by economic reforms, but also political turmoil, culminating in the emergency, 1975-1977, when civil liberties were suspended and opposition leaders were jailed. In the decades that followed, India experienced both triumphs and setbacks. It emerged as a nuclear power in 1998, and its economy began to grow rapidly after the liberalization reforms of the 1990s. However, India also faced internal challenges, including communal violence, ethnic tensions, and ongoing disputes with Pakistan over Kashmir. Today, India is one of the world's fastest-growing economies, a major player in global geopolitics, and the world's largest democracy. It has made significant strides in fields like technology, space exploration, and education, while continuing to grapple with issues like poverty, corruption, and environmental degradation. Conclusion: India's history is a fascinating journey through time, encompassing ancient civilizations, the rise and fall of empires, religious transformations, colonial domination, and the triumphant struggle for independence. As one of the world's oldest and most enduring cultures, India's legacy continues to shape the modern world, offering a blend of tradition and innovation, diversity and unity. Today, India stands as a symbol of resilience and progress, a nation that has overcome immense challenges to forge its place on the global stage.